Good morning, my fellow weary travelers. This is Andre Dion Moore, your Dark Nerd Rises. Happy 4th of July, and I hope that everyone will have a wonderful 4th today. As you can see here, I got this little shirt with the Captain America insignia, legendary. Let me see if I can turn it around. Um, it's got it's like a little cafe style shirt. And as far as anything close to being anything that's patriotic related, I knew this shirt was going to be appropriate because we are going to focus today on one of Captain America's co-creators, and that is none other than the late great Jack the King Kirby. With this being Independence Day, July the 4th, everybody's going to be in the patriotic fervor. Let's not worry about this past week, and whatever has been going on right now. There might be a little analogy to this, but for now, we're going to focus on someone who literally, when you think of Jack Kirby, you think of the co-creator of comic books, the co-creator of the entire Marvel universe. His work is synonymous, and basically, the man, definitely was a living legend for a good long time, and now he's basically just legendary. And one aspect you may not realize was that during World War II, Jack Kirby served in the military. He was drafted on July 7th, 1943, to serve as a scout in World War II. If I'm correct, I'm looking this information up. Yeah, July 7th, 1943. And it was when he had told the recruitment officer that, or he asked him, what did he do for a living? And he said, well, he drew comic books. And so that made him an ideal candidate to be a scout, to go out before any of the troops and of the units and scout and draw with his own eyes visually to see um, what they were, to give an advanced scout to see what territories they're going to go through. And I'm looking this up right here. It's from an article from the comic book from, let's see, the Red Sheet, Dork 40, Red Sheet, Jack Kirby in World War II. Based off a book called The Comic Book Apocalypse. It says Jack Kirby fought World War II, and unlike some other cartoonists with more impressive resumes and greater ability to sell themselves, Kirby was a grunt. He arrived on D-Day, that's important, remember that, and fought with the 11th Infantry in the long, slow liberation of France. And the only thing his artistic ability got him in all that time was the job of scout. Kirby would be sent out ahead of the main forces alone, to reconnoiter and draw pictures of the French villages he found to give the troops a better idea of what lay ahead. Now, I gotta tell you, right there, just reading that, for him to accept that offer, that's ballsy. I mean, that really is ballsy. I'm reminded of, to me, the legendary cover that he drew from Captain America 1940. Captain America punching Hitler in the face. Basically, this is what he's literally doing right now. Okay, no superpowers. I mean, his only superpower was his eyes and what he could see and draw at that time. That right there in itself speaks volumes. And it goes further to say that it was dangerous work that often led Kirby into close calls with German troops. He learned to be stealthy and to be careful, but sometimes conflict was unavoidable. On one such occasion, in the fall of 1944, Kirby got distracted by a rare sight, an abandoned tavern in which the liquor bottles were still intact. But when he went inside, he found that he wasn't the only one answering the siren call of the booze. 3 SS officers were already there, and they caught Kirby flat-footed. They forced him to his knees, and upon examining his dog tags, realized he was a Jew. Okay, This was at the height of, like I said, World War II, and anti-Semitism was, I mean, was at more than just an all-time high. I mean, just knowing that you were in a territory where, knowing that someone found out that you were Jewish, you could be killed just instantly. And you look at World War II, it was because of all the gospel and the preachings of hate. And sometimes I said that I was going to say anything about considering current events and all that, but I said there was something there was going to be uh, something that would mirror to it. We got to look at what we're going through right now. And there's no room for any type of hate for anyone, especially when it comes to maybe people of different ethnic backgrounds, not people possibly, but just of any background, and um, that right there is a sobering thought. Because I mean, this man right here was going to be executed no matter what, but we got to see. I'm going to read and show you what happened, and it's going to be to his recollection when I read it to you. It's going to be kind of, might be a little murky, as the article will go on to say, but let's read what happens. Okay, it says here. It says, at this point, Kirby's own accounts of the story often becomes disjointed. He remembered maddening details of the scene, especially the knife one of the Nazis had holstered in his boot. And certainly that would have been a powerful image, a German dagger right at eye level as he knelt down, the Nazis taunting him in preparation for doing God knows what. Kirby said in interviews that a red sheet came down over his eyes, and then he didn't have a clear recollection of what happened next. He grabbed the knife. That much seems clear. There was stabbing, shooting, in order what he obviously didn't remember. But when it was over and the red sheet lifted, Jack Kirby was alive, and those three Nazis weren't. And as it says here, powerful stuff. I look at that and I'd say right here, that man became Captain America. No point, no questions asked. He became the character that he co-created among others. And, that right there, I mean, when I say, Stan Lee served in World War II, but he basically worked behind the scenes. And I love you, Stan. Definitely love you. But, and many others too, had active roles in this, in active, who were in comic books, had active roles in World War II. But when it comes to, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, okay, they had a very important roles in World War II. I believe they were behind the desk too. But Jack Kirby right here, you talk about portrait of an American badass. He was an American badass. Let's go on. It says, I've taken the story from an essay, and it's the article. It says from an essay called "The Red Sheet" by Glenn David Gold, and he looks at many later Kirby works and wonders if they weren't examples of him working out post-traumatic stress in story form. He makes a convincing case on Kirby's work in the '60s to Captain America, and there was a group he did called The Losers. Okay, that book basically was a World War II strip starring characters whose solo features had been canceled. So he put them together, and basically what he did was that, it says they were all put together as a makeshift commando unit whose missions often ended in soul-crushing failure, living object lessons in the horrors of war. Of course, being the losers. But the thing was that, in Jack Kirby's hands when he wrote them, they all became winners. Hard luck heroes who couldn't catch a break, but who nonetheless found a way to succeed in the end. And you think about that too, and you think about some of his other works too, like Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos, the Captain America stories that came out in the '60s. Let's look at his work, when it came to intolerance. Him being a Jew, he would have been killed no matter what. Not only being American, but being a Jew. Look at the works that came out, when he co-created the X-Men, when he co-created the Black Panther. And then you look at the inclusion of like with the for the Inhumans, hidden people who could, the Attillans. You look at they were different races and so forth, and people could have judged were going to judge them and hate them for for who they are or what religion they practice. This weighed heavily on Jack Kirby, and it's like in the losers here, it says Kirby also echoed his own war experiences in one occasion, having the losers head into abandoned French village filled with hidden enemies. Wow. And the artist was picking his the images very carefully and everything. And if I can, I'll find the link and I'll put the link into my comments and so forth, or into my intro, into my heading, my description. But this here, though, it's amazing to know this about one of the greatest, if not the greatest, comic book artist, comic book co-writers of all time. And on this 4th of July, we're celebrating the independence and those who served. And comic books have always had, will always have stories about war, whether it's World War II, which when comic books blew up during the golden age, World War II was it. World War II, was when was when you had many of the writers use their genre to help boost the war effort. We go past into the Vietnam War. You had the Korea. I'm not going to skip the Korean War because war stories were still continuing more. Right after that, because Korea was in a way later covered during the Vietnam War. They say it was the forgotten war, and really, in a way, it was, unless you watch MASH and you read stories about the Korean War and different comic book stories. But you look at the Vietnam War, the effects on that, the negativity and aspects of war came out during at that period, and then you also have later on the conflicts with the Gulf War. Many of our veterans served, the first Gulf War. That fervor came back, when we went to war back in 1990, 91. And then the sad events of 9/11 happened, and we went into the second Gulf War in Afghanistan and so forth. And comic books still played a key role. More importantly, too, was the fact that it began to address issues of post-traumatic stress disorder for soldiers who came back home. Many soldiers were suffering from PTSD. Many veterans were. To you soldiers, I want to sit here and say, and I'm saying this because on behalf of my father who served during the Vietnam era, I want to say to all of you, thank you. Because no matter what, at the end of the day, no matter what events may have happened this week, no matter what we've been through together as a country for the last 8 years or whatever, I want you guys to know that your service and your loyalty and your dedication is much appreciated, beyond more, not much appreciated, more beyond appreciated. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart that we as a nation are is still thriving, is still safe, because whether it's here at home or and especially abroad, you protect our shores and you protect our states and borders and everything. I want to thank you for that. It's not easy right now at this time, with so much of the division we have today. But for all of us here, again, and this is something that I touched on when it comes to comic books and mental health, with me, it's been an opening journey. And I hope it's been an opening journey for you, that if you do read a comic book and you see something, put yourself into it and just, let it be your therapy. And many of you guys are comic book collectors. So for you, this is a double, more like a double, not a whammy, but more of something of a double positive for you, because you can share your stories through the printed art form. And that right there is something that is the wonder of comic books. It's the wonder of fandom, science fiction, and so forth, and everything. You know, we all have a role to play in today's 4th of July, no matter what, and we have a role to play within the next couple of years by getting out and voting, by just being supportive, and actually now just more of a time instead of being divided to come together. And because, we have some frightening avenues coming up, things that might, we're thinking of, but I mean, it's not going to be a spook thing or nothing like that when I speak of that, talk about this, or allude to that. But the thing is, though, is this: for this 4th of July, remember our freedoms, remember our independence, remember, you know, it took us a while on many aspects for people of any race, creed, color, religion to be included, to have some freedoms, to have their freedoms, brought forth, and for them to be free. Freedom is still being worked on, but we are free at the point where we are not under any a tyrannical government. I know people are going to kind of might say something about that now, but the thing is, though, we still have that. We still have that ideal of the American democracy, what our founding fathers put forth. It wasn't perfect, by no means necessary, and it still isn't. But the thing is, for us that we are still fighting for this, that we are worried about this, we can't go back, only forward. And for people like Jack Kirby, who fought for us to go forward as a nation, for him to go and write stories and do beautiful artwork to convey that message, that's something we all can benefit from. For Stan going, whether he was working behind the desk or not, it didn't matter. He still served. But that's one thing I want to sit there and touch on, one quick thing on that. Him, Jack Kirby, and many of the artists at that time who were young Jewish men, they heard about things about the Holocaust. They knew what was going on. That's why when you see so many images of World War II superheroes over in the war and effort, it's not so much at them, doing propaganda. It's the fact many of those men who may not have been able to go overseas, like Jack did, literally, and face, life and death situations. Many of those used their characters to go and fight an evil, knowing what the evil was doing to their people, to their religion. They knew about the Holocaust. That's one key giveaway. Stories came, from family over in Germany, so they knew what was going on. And for them, each 4th of July, and hopefully it was, that they always were reminded that when they fought, whether it was literally overseas or on printed page, they fought for the freedoms of their people and lost loved ones over in Germany. And that's something we got to take to heart for this year. We are fighting for our freedom. We are still fighting for our freedom. But for today, we're going to honor those who fought for our freedom, and honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice, and honor those who are no longer with us, who served, my father included. Thank you. We are honoring you today. So to everyone, please hit and like the subscribe button. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and that I would love to say happy 4th. Enjoy, and as always, agape.